The next session we are heading into is taming the novel coronavirus, vaccine for the novel coronavirus, challenges and prospects, repurposed drugs for COVID-19, where we stand and what's the future. So, Dr. Monday, we start with you. My first question to you would be on the most promising COVID vaccines so far.
So it will be difficult to define the most promising COVID vaccine. I'll mention four of them, the ones that are considered to be front runners in the world right now. The first of them is promoted by a company called Moderna in US. That's a messenger RNA based vaccine. This is the approach that is being tried for the first time, and if successful, actually it will be quite revolutionary. There are two other vaccines which are very similar in nature. They use adenovirus vectors and they use spike protein as the vaccine is saying. And one is from Oxford and AstraZeneca that is being promoted, and that has actually entered phase 2, phase 3 clinical trials recently. A similar one is promoted by CanSino in China, a company called CanSino. That also is similar one. There is a slight difference in the vector that they use, these two. And the fourth one is promoted by Pfizer along with a German biotechnology company, and that also is a RNA-based vaccine. So they're the four front runners at this moment that have gone into clinical trials.
So, Doctor, do we have a timeline by when these trials would be over? Because it is being said that Oxford's Covishield will be launched in India by November. Does this seem like a feasible timeline?
See, all depends upon what kind of results we get in the clinical trials. The phase 1 is over. Essentially, it has been shown that there are no untoward side effects on healthy people when you give it to them. But now comes a challenging phase in which people would be vaccinated, and we have to actually show that most of them don't develop COVID symptoms or whatever. So those trials have just begun for all these four of them, or other three of them out of these. So this is a challenging phase we have just entered now, and it will take time. It will take about 4-5 months to assess the results of these particular trials. Only after that we'll be able to tell whether they can get into a field or not.
So let's stay hopeful that at least in the next 2-3 months we get to see some results. And with this, I come to you, Dr. Agarwal. Welcome to the Health Summit.
I want to add what Shekharji has said.
Yes, sure, Doctor.
This virus is predictably unpredictable. This virus is causing post-COVID illnesses. That means we are getting cases who have fever after they have recovered from COVID, getting recurrent fever, recurrent hypercoagulable state. People are getting even cytokine crisis after they have recovered. We have seen people getting heart attack after they have recovered. They're getting fever, they're getting loose motions, they are getting loss of smell lasting for 3 months, 4 months. So when we get a vaccine, we have two important things in vaccine. A, immediately they should be able to prohibit the virus. B, they should also be able to prevent virus-related complications like cellular component, which is cytokine crisis. Then pneumonias, this is again part of cytokine crisis, hypercoagulable state and inflammatory state. This virus, because it is causing a post-COVID phenomena, so we also want to know that the vaccine which we are giving is also preventing delayed complications of the virus. Say, for example, Indian virus is live attenuated virus, what Covaxin we are talking about. It may prevent virus, may not prevent post-virus complications. So when we talk about the virus from adenovirus, it is only taking care of the spike protein. Are we 100% sure it is only the spike protein portion of the virus which is detrimental to our health? May not be. Maybe the spike protein is also only causing pneumonia. So will we be able to prevent loss of smell, loss of taste? So when we see this virus is behaving A, left eye involvement, B, loss of smell, loss of taste. They are single factor as the only manifestation of COVID. Some people have pneumonia, some people don't have pneumonia. Some people have loose motion, some people have GI symptoms, some people only have headache, some people only have cystitis. So whether the vaccine will be able to prevent all aspects of this virus complications, we don't know, because we still don't know which portion of the virus is causing what disease. We are presuming that whatever is the basic culprit is the spike. Is spike going to produce humoral antibodies or cellular antibodies? We don't know. So I don't find, unless we have given to volunteers a 1-year trial, that during 1 year after giving the vaccine, they have not developed chronic complications or they have not developed delayed complications. I don't think so this virus will become a universal virus. At this moment, a virus is being produced in haste only because the countries want to improve their economical status. No virus should be available unless you have tested long-term and delayed complications. We have seen Moderna, which has prevented the pneumonia, but it has not reduced the viral load. We don't know what will be the implication. We don't know. And we have seen the Oxford virus, which is showing both humoral and cellular immunity. How long it will last, we don't know. So at this moment, vaccine will come. Vaccine will come tomorrow. But how effective it will be, we are, as a medical profession, we are skeptical.
Yes, doctor. So continuing from what you're saying, so a lot of the drugs which were earlier being cited as, effective, like at one point of time, the HCQ was considered to be a potential cure for COVID-19, but research says that it is ineffective now. So moreover, there are many side effects as well. If you could shed light on the side effects.
So Pooja ji, let me say this virus is causing, it's a virus. It's an it's causing inflammation, it is causing cytokine response, and it is forming clots. So for clots, we need to give anti-clotting drugs. For cytokines, we need to give interleukin-6 inhibitor and steroids. For inflammation, high grade, you need to give steroids. For low grade persistent inflammation, you need to give hydroxychloroquine or colchicine. As a virus, it behaves two ways, antiviral and antibacterial. As the antibacterial portion of the virus, we need to give doxycycline or azithromycin. And if as a virus, we have three options. Either we have anti-HIV drugs, only if the CD4 count is low. If the patient presents early, we can give the firapiravir or we can give a remdesivir. Now, both these antiviral drugs will reduce the illness by 1 or 2 days. They may not reduce the mechanical ventilation. To reduce the mechanical ventilation and mortality, you only need is an anti-inflammatory drugs, which is corticosteroids, low dose for 10 days. Anti-inflammatory is the thing which kills. Virus is not killing people. It's the inflammation and thrombosis which is killing. Therefore, a combination of a blood thinner, which is low molecular weight heparin, and steroids, IV or oral, are the only mortality reducer. But in mild cases, if you give antivirals, your sickness may reduce by 2 days or 3 days. And that's the same thing we saw in flu. In flu also, we saw the same thing. If you want to reduce your illness by 2 days, take Tamiflu, which is oseltamivir.
So you're saying that for different conditions, different combination of drugs would have to be used here?
Absolutely. It's a precision-based medicine. You cannot generalize. Every patient is different. Remember, this virus is predictably unpredictable. And depending upon the unpredictability, you need to decide what drug to give, what not drug to give. You cannot make a uniform scale ki sabko ye de do.
Doctor, what are the approved usage guidelines for remdesivir?
So remdesivir, as of now, both FDA as well as in India DCGI, CDSCO, they have approved it for restricted emergency use. That means it has to be given with the prior consent of the patient, and only if there is a chance that the patient actually might slip into something which is irrecoverable. So as of now, remdesivir trial results are awaited at a large scale at many different things. And what we know about remdesivir, as pointed out correctly by Dr. Agarwal, is it seems to reduce the patient stay in the hospital from about 15 days to about 11 days or 10 days or something like that. So the entire thing about remdesivir is not very well known. We'll have to wait and watch on that.
So Dr. Mande, also, when can we expect Covaxin to launch? WHO hasn't listed Covaxin as a vaccine candidate that can be considered for further development, though it has cleared the preclinical stage. Why is this so?
So Dr. Agarwal actually explained very beautifully the entire vaccine thing. Clinical trials do take a much longer time. I mean, at this moment we are assessing whether one can reduce mortality and one can prevent the disease. That's the immediate priority, and that has been being assessed. But they also take time. I mean, it's very foolhardy to expect that something will come very quickly. So we will have to wait for the clinical trials to get over, which might take a few months to happen. So we'll have to actually wait for the results of these clinical trials.
I just want to add, Pooja, and that is that what Shekharji has said. See, the advantage of Indian vaccine is we are using the Indian strain of the virus. In adenovirus, Oxford virus, you are using a strain which is prevalent in those countries. Will they be effective in India? We don't know. Will the Indian virus be effective outside India? We don't know, because the strains are different. There are multiple strains circulating in the circulation. mRNA, which is a messenger RNA vaccine, because this is a synthetic vaccine, it may be of value to every country because it is exactly not taking the strain which you are replicating. Therefore, for Indian vaccine, we are looking forward fast track results, because it contains a strain, though it is a live attenuated virus, which may cause a large number of complications, and but it has an advantage and disadvantage both. So we are looking for, as in India, WHO is concerned about the whole world. They are not concerned about the India. So India will look forward for an Indian vaccine, which is live attenuated. And if it is for an Indian strain, it may be effective for India-like situation like India, Pakistan, Nepal, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka, because we have predominant Aryan, Dravidian, and Mongolian type of generation. There it may be effective.
So for each country would have to develop their own strain.
I don't say that. I don't say that. I said messenger RNA, yes, because this is a synthetic vaccine, may be applicable to all the countries. But adenovirus, depending upon if they're using a spike protein for an American strain of the virus, how effective it will be in India, we don't know. Because we are finding in America and in Europe, the clinical features are different. We don't see a systemic, multi-system inflammatory condition seen in US and in Europe, in India. We have not seen the very high mortality of inflammation in Europe and America in India. So we have different types of strains. So we presume that the vaccine will also have different results. We don't know. I'm repeatedly saying, predictably unpredictable. A vaccine may come back as a cure. Which country's vaccine will become a cure, we don't know. At this moment, that's the reason so many countries are competing. And it is also, whosoever brings the first vaccine will make trillions of dollars and will become the #1 economical country in the world.
Sure. Also, Dr. Agarwal, one of the keys to one of the keys to taming the novel coronavirus is to stem its transmission. But scientists are now saying that it could be airborne. So what precautions should we be taking if it's already airborne? And what exactly airborne means?
Pooja ji, airborne does not mean it is like a pollution. The term airborne is basically for a pollution which is there in every centimeter of the air. No, this is not like that. Here, airborne means that it can travel slightly more than the 3 feet, 6 feet or a 9 feet area, and it can stay in the air for some more time than immediately coming down on the floor. Airborne in terms of COVID-19 means that if you have a common TV, if you have a common bathroom, if you have a common dining table, and if you have a common kitchen, you are likely to sit in a congested place for more than half an hour watching so-called incoming IPL, which is going to increase the number of cases in the world, because specifically in India. So if you are sitting in a small place which is congested, which is closed from all over, which is not cross ventilated, if one is infected, everybody is going to become infected. But if I travel in a park, fully ventilated, if I have meetings in my sunlight, in the sunlight, I'm absolutely safe. If it was air pollution, I would have been infected anywhere. Airborne in corona means if you are sitting in a closed chamber, fully ill ventilated, fully AC with recirculating air, multiple people spacing out in less than 6 by 6. If you have more than one person, you are likely to get infection. That is airborne. So forget about that. Airborne means I should not go out, I should not take a park, I should not go to the park. In fact, I sit every day and practice in my garden. That's the best place for me to say. Cross ventilated air, air circulation is there, sunlight is there, and I don't expect any airborne there.
Thank you so much, Dr. Agarwal, for clearing this misconception and telling us what exactly airborne means. So just to reiterate, you're saying it is better to be outdoors than be, stuck
There are
with.
a large number of studies which says that indoor is more harmful than outdoor. Therefore, in this season, if this season of monsoon, if you are going to go away without an umbrella in your hand, you are risking yourself, because the time there is a rain, you will tend to enter inside a shop or a bus shelter, and not only you, 40 more people will come there. And if the rain stays there for more than 10 minutes, all of you, there is no social distancing, your mask is already wet, and you may be able to transmit the infection. And this IPL decision, this oncoming IPL decision, that IPL is starting on 6th of September, during an IPL when the match is going on, if there is a common TV, all the people in the house will be sitting in one room. And at that time, when the Sixers are coming, you forget about social distancing. You start jumping, you come near and near to the TV, and you will end up into an infection. Therefore, a warning has to come in every IPL match that kindly in a physical distancing while watching TV.
We will keep that in mind. Definitely, we're all going to watch the match in different rooms. So that, of course.
If you have a common TV, therefore the TV has to show a warning. Kindly maintain physical distancing while seeing IPL. I'm talking about IPL because IPL makes you emotional. News doesn't make you emotional. When you are emotional, it looks like if somebody is making a sixer, you want to be close to the TV. So if everybody wants to be close to the TV, you take away the physical distancing.
And also we tend to want to enjoy the match with our friends and family.
Yes.
So that is a general tendency. Also, Dr. Mande, my next question to you is about air conditioning systems. So we've been hearing that air conditioning is known to be one of the major culprits behind the COVID-19. If you could explain this a bit.
See, Dr. Agarwal already mentioned about what is airborne. What happens is when we speak or when we sing or when we sneeze or when we cough, there are always some particles that come out of our respiration or our mouth or something. Now, these particles can be of different sizes. They start from 0.1 micron all the way up to 10-15 microns. A micron is 1,000th of a millimeter. Now, these particles can have encapsulated virus in them. And if the particles are large, such as 10 or 12 microns, what we call as aerosols, like that, they settle down on surfaces very easily. But if the particles are smaller, what we call as droplet nuclei, which are smaller than 5 microns, they can remain suspended in air. On a suspended particle in air, if you have a centralized AC or something, can get recirculated through the circulatory system of the air conditioners and so on and so forth. And therefore, Dr. Agarwal quite rightly pointed out that if you are in a room and if the room is well ventilated, you are actually better protected in a well ventilated room than in a closed room. So this is essentially what it means, that suspended particles, if they have encapsulated virus in that, that can actually cause some sort of transmission from people to people. That's essentially what Dr. Agarwal was mentioning.
Also, are there any user guidelines when we are sitting in ACs? Because most of us, during this humid weather are using ACs.
So humidity and all, we don't know yet what the effect has, but the general guidelines about wearing a mask all the time, and regularly washing your hands and maintaining the distance that Dr. Agarwal so nicely mentioned. All of these actually, if you follow, the probability of catching the infection, or if one is infected, probability of transmitting that to another person reduces. So we must follow all these guidelines.
So as a doctor, I want to add, Pooja, that as a doctor, because our viral load is higher, more and more number of patients are coming. When Shekharji is sitting and having 10 members, chances of one being positive is very, very low. But if as a doctor, if I'm having 10 patients, at least 2 of them will be positive. And we have seen 20%, 23% of positivity rate. In that particular situation, in a room where our chamber is, either it is 100% cross ventilated. So therefore, my front gate should be open all the time. If it is not possible, if I'm using a AC, then window AC is better than split. If I cannot use and window AC, if I'm using a split AC, I will change its setting so that some fresh air comes in. And with that, I need to take away the virus. So therefore, I need to put a air purifier with 6 exchanges per hour. That's a must for me. And because those viruses are going into and trapping into the filter, and the filter should not cause a disease, therefore I need to have a UV light, which is called as a plasma. There are portable plasma units available. So for a 100% healthcare setting in a clinic, I need a plasma unit which takes care of UV killing of the organisms. I need a filter and I need an air purifier. If I do these 3 things, then I am reducing my chances of infecting to other patients to a minimum. This may not be applicable to Shekhar Bhai's room because he is not seeing patients and is not interacting with patients. But in a hospital setting, it is my duty to see to it that I protect myself and I protect other patients.
So these are some very, very valuable tips, Dr. Agarwal. I really hope that most of the viewers who are listening right now can adapt these. Also, recently, the DCGI has approved the restricted use of psoriasis drug, itolizumab. So if you could explain how this works, and do you think it will be effective against COVID-19?
So today, I again said that we are looking for an anti-inflammatory drug, which we have is a corticosteroids. Then we have also looking for a cytokine drug, a drug which can reduce my IL-6, which can take care of my cytokines. So all this is Zumab, tocilizumab, or whatever there is a MAB, MAB means monoclonal antibodies. So MAB, every drug which ends with MAB, that is called as monoclonal antibodies. MAB are the last 3 words. So all these drugs now are being used for chronic immunogenic activity like rheumatoid arthritis, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis. So all chronic immunological disorders, whichever drug we use, they specifically act on a cytokines in my body. This can be interleukin-6, this can be cytokines. So all those drugs which are being used in rheumatology now are being tried in cases of corona, which becomes dangerous. Now remember, if there are only 4 days in corona. If you take care of them, you are not going to die. Day 3, day 4, day 5, and day 6. If on day 3, 4, 5, 6, if you walk and check your SpO2 levels, if your SpO2 levels is falling by more than 5%, which same thing happened to one of a great celebrity of the country. When he was rushed to a hospital, his SpO2 level fall. If your SpO2 level falls on day 3, 4, 5, 6, it means you have developed pneumonia. If you have developed pneumonia with the hypoxia, means low oxygen, it means you already have a cytokine acting in the body and you have started clot formation in the body. Without a clot formation, hypoxia will not develop. At that particular moment, you need to shoot corticosteroid and you need to shoot a low molecular weight heparin. If you find that in spite of steroids, your inflammation is not going, and the patient is showing high count of IL-6, his cardiac markers are increasing, ferritin level and D-dimer levels are increasing, that means he is going into a crisis. At that particular moment, we give monoclonal antibodies. So all these drugs which we are talking about are monoclonal antibodies ending with the word MAB, M-A-B. So rituximab, infliximab, tocilizumab, these are all MABs and monoclonal antibodies which can specifically target a particular type of a cytokine.
So, doctor. Also, the scientists are trying to come up with nasal vaccines for COVID-19. If you could explain how they would work. Could they be more efficient than shots and oral vaccines?
See, whenever we have a vaccine, there are different routes of vaccination. We may have, say, for example, if I want to produce a vaccine, I need a virus. I can kill it, it will be a killed vaccine. I can make it impotent, it will be a live attenuated vaccine. A virus may have a banyan, which is called envelope, a kameez, which is called as, banyan, which is called as a membrane, a kameez, which is envelope, and buttons, which is called as its spike. So I can use any part as a vaccine. Any part I can use it as a vaccine. Today we are using either a killed vaccine, a live attenuated vaccine, or we are using a spike. And if I use the spike of this vaccine and change it with the buttons of other virus, which is a vectored adenovirus I'm using, if I'm making it artificially, it becomes messenger RNA. Now, when I want to inject it into the body, I have different options. I can give it intranasal, I can give it intramuscular, I can give intradermal, I can give it orally. So every virus will behave differently. And we have the same thing coming up into flu. We have flu vaccine, which is available as inside the body, as well as nasal vaccine. So nasal vaccine, the results will only show us which vaccine route is better. We still don't know how many injection needs to be given. We still don't know if this virus behaves like a polio, then we will need a polio date. Then we will have a corona dates. Every month there is a corona date and you need a vaccine. Still we don't know. Which vaccine will work, we don't know. But we know from experience that nasal vaccine of flu was better and it was better tolerated by many people.
So doctor, so every day, I think
I would like to have Shekhar Mandreji also comments on this because he is an expert on that.
Monday, please shed some light.
Yeah. So basically what happens is what Dr. Agarwal said very rightly, there are many different ways that one can administer a vaccine. Now, our ultimate job is actually to activate our immune system, our body's immune system, so that when the actual virus comes in, when we actually encounter the virus, that can be very effectively tackled. Now, there are many different ways that we can do it. The nasal vaccines essentially would do is they would actually activate through our mucosal system some parts of the immune system that would eventually make the immune system ready when the actual attack of the virus comes in. Similarly, we can have intravenous, we can have oral, and so on and so forth. But it just depends upon what kind of immune response would you prefer to have against that vaccine. So it's a good way to try. We don't know whether it will be successful or not, but no harm in trying that.
So doctors, let's hope we can find a solution to this virus very soon. And before we end the session, we have some users who are wanting to ask you questions. So I'll quickly take these questions. So I think the questions for you, Dr. Agarwal. What is the average cost of COVID-19 treatment in India?
From zero to any amount, because 99% will become all right whether you do anything or not. If you share a oximeter, if you share a oxygen concentrator, cost can be zero. And it can be any amount because it's a fear which sells. If you are fearful, you can sell your house and say, take my house and save me. Only 1% of the people who need a ventilator care, and for that, Government of India and Government of Delhi should provide them free treatment. So for a person who is poor, I don't think so he should be worried. If he is educated, he knows what to do, what not to do. Most of the people, if at the most you will require a oxygen, Only those people who require high-grade oxygen, or you require a BiPAP. Even BiPAP is available 500 rupees a day as a rental. So if you really doctor wants to care for you, there should be this should not be a criteria that poor people are going to die.
Right.
And today testing is not required. Today we are so experienced that just by looking at the symptoms, we can know what is going to happen. We can predict many things, but still it remains unpredictable. But lots of things can be predicted, and we can take care of them. Only those who become serious, obviously, then treatment is every drug may cost you thousands of bucks. That's a different issue. And that's what the government is made. Government is only made for emergencies. For non-emergencies, we should be able to look after the person.
Dr. Mandi, my next question for you: how frequently? How frequently should one wash the hands to keep the coronavirus at bay? So we've been hearing about this, that every time you go out, you do it. But yes, what is the ideal? Is there like a limit?
So, Dr. Agarwal and I, both of us come from Nagpur, and we have a different sense of humor. So one could say that one could wash hands as frequently as one could. See, the virus has lipid membrane. The lipids are very oily. And if you remember, when we eat oily food, say parathas, chapati, or puris or something, you can't just wash a hand with water and oil doesn't go off very easily with water. And that's why we wash with detergents, soap or something like that. Soap dissolves oil and then you can actually get rid of it. And that's why it is recommended that you wash your hands with soap at least for 20 seconds or something like that, so that whatever oily parts which are sticking to your skin, that can be washed off. And you should properly wash all parts of the hand, so that at no part of the hand the virus would remain sticking, because then you have the danger of the entry of the virus through those contaminated hands, either through your mouth or nose or eyes, wherever you touch them. And therefore you should wash them as frequently as possible. Typically when you touch surfaces, tables, doorknobs, fridges and all, they are the potential source of getting contact on your hand. And that's what actually, therefore we say that one should wash as frequently as we can.
So, doctor, so there is just one last question. The question is, what should be the safety measures one needs to follow during the post-lockdown period?
So in a post-lockdown period, I always tell my patients two ways. When the virus is inside, in a today telecommunication mode, he can call up his friends and say, you also come here. So if the virus tells other viruses to come and join him, that's called co-infection. This virus may go and tell people that this is the weakness, you go there. So therefore, this is called as a post-COVID infection. So therefore, we don't know how long your immunity is low. Therefore, chances of acquiring secondary infections are very high in the post-COVID phase. Therefore, COVID or no COVID, for the next 4 years, wear mask at home, outside. If you cannot maintain a distance of 6 feet, wear mask. Remember one thing, my legal right. My legal right is nobody has a right in my 6 feet area of all around me, which is given to be my God to breathe. In that area, nobody has a business to enter with a virus inside. If he still likes to come, both of us have to wear a mask. Therefore, that non-masking campaign in America needs to be condemned, where people say, I have a right not to wear a mask. Fine. If you have a right not to wear a mask, then you have no right to enter into my 6 feet of Lakshman Rekha and bring a viral breath into my mouth.
So thank you, doctor, with this last very valuable tip. So even when we see cases going down considerably, we all need to continue wearing the mask and washing our hands. And thank you, Dr. Shekhar, and thank you, Dr. Agarwal, for giving us your valuable time. Thanks a lot. And the tips you've given us will hopefully help us keep us safe. So thanks a lot.